But first, can I ask you about what the Parliament is meant to be considering this week? Apparently the Religious Freedom Bill, but you haven't seen any legislation. Does Labor support it in principle anyway?
Well, of course we support religious freedom in principle. No one should be discriminated against for their religious beliefs or their religious practice. It is a basic human right that you've got a right to practice your religion. And we've only just received the legislation, of course. We'll be examining that closely. It's likely to go off to a parliamentary inquiry so that people will be able to make submissions to that inquiry about the details of the legislation. But in principle, we don't support religious discrimination, just as we don't support discrimination on other grounds.
This has been significantly watered down. It is there to also protect students and teachers. You couldn't discriminate on the grounds of someone being gay, for example. That's how I understand the bill. Is that your view of it too?
Well, I saw the Education Minister say that on your program recently, and the Attorney-General has also said that, but I think it's important that we take the time to examine the legislation properly and make sure that those protections, particularly for students, are still there. I mean, we did have the Prime Minister say in 2018 that he was going to clarify that students couldn't be expelled from school, for example, but we haven't really seen much action or any action on that since that announcement was made. So we're going to take the time, have a look at this legislation closely, listen to people in the community about their analysis of the legislation. We'll do that in a proper and methodical way.
OK, let's talk Queensland. It's all getting a bit ridiculous, isn't it? Are you clear on how you can get into Queensland if you want to once that double dose milestone is reached?
Look, I'm clear that I want to go to Queensland because it's been too long since I've been there, and I'm really looking forward to getting back up to Queensland and campaigning on the ground with the fantastic candidates we've got up there. Look, you know, I just think all these things we just need to take a bit of a common sense approach, and I believe that this morning the announcement's been made that as long as you've got your average sort of COVID test, you'll be okay to get in.
Well, the government seems to think there's something coordinated going on with federal Labor and the Labor states, is there?
Well, honestly, I don't need a phone call from a Labor Premier to tell me that Scott Morrison did a bad job on the vaccine rollout and quarantine and that he's vacated the field. And in fact, I've said to you, Laura, more than once, thank goodness for the state premiers, Labor and Liberal. Australians have been fantastic in response to the COVID crisis. We've got very high vaccination rates across most of the Australian community, and by comparison with the international situation, we've had low death rates because we have looked after each other. We've been disciplined, we've been kind, we've gone out and got vaccinated, we've worn our masks, we've done the right thing. And it's been the state governments, Liberal and Labor, who've been running the hospital system and doing the heavy lifting during this pandemic.
As you and I have both noted, though, there has been some unkind decisions made when it comes to compassionate exemptions on the borders. How do you make up for that? Like, how do state premiers wind that back? Because that really has damaged some families.
Look, it has been really hard. And in fact, I've had in my office people very upset when they haven't been able to travel either overseas or interstate for important family reasons. And I think it has been really distressing in some cases. I accept that. I think, right now, as we get back on this track to something more like normal, we still have the opportunity, where border restrictions are in place, to take a compassionate approach, to take a case-by-case approach where that's warranted. I think we should do that.